This is Advisor 3.0, a show designed to help you as a financial advisor elevate your professional practice, transform your clients' lives, and take your business to the next level. I am Abraham Okusanya. Welcome to the show. Platforms, investment platforms, are no longer fit for purpose. Platform 1.0, remember them? A bustling marketplace reminiscent of a Dickens novel where asset managers hawked their funds like medieval merchants and financial advisors were paid commission, hefty enough to make a pirate blush. Then the FCA swaggered in, wielding RDR like Thor's armor, and suddenly Platform 1.0 was as relevant as a floppy disk at an iPhone launch. Enter Platform 2.0, our knight in shining armor, or so we thought. Championing the fee-for-service model, it promised to make portfolio management as elegant as ballroom dancing. Alas, it tripled over its own feet, and the renaissance of this tragicomedy, the great data fragmentation, a feature, not a bug. Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Platform 3.0, a true revolution, not just an upgrade, a world where the advisor-client relationship takes center stage and the investment platform retreats into the background, humming a supportive tune of a proud parent. With me today to celebrate the demise of Platform 2.0 and welcome Platform 3.0, the age of the embedded platform, is none other than the legendary David Ferguson. David, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Abraham. Thank you very much for having me. That's an extraordinary introduction. Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Do you like my poetic?
Yeah, you're obviously better educated than I was. You know, you got more grown-up references in there than I could muster. But yeah, it's no, I obviously support the thesis. You know.
All right, let's talk about that. So, platforms are as they exist right now are no longer fit for purpose. Discuss.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. If you go back to even your platform, I mean, Platform 1.0 was very product-led, right? Right. It was basically a distribution mechanism for funds, as you alluded to. And, you know, at the time, I think it's worth recognizing that was a step forward from what had gone before. I think Platform 2.0 was I end up reflecting as being a bit of a stepping stone, you know, because it improved transparency, it allowed, you know, no-load funds to come into the UK, you know. Vanguard wasn't in the UK before Platform 2.0 because they wouldn't pay the commissions and stuff. So I don't think it should be seen as unhelpful, you know. But actually, I think what then happened is, you know, we got more transparency. Advisors could start to think more about how they ran their portfolios, or obviously people like yourselves run their portfolios for them, sort of unconstrained by the vested interests of the asset management industry, which I think is a good thing. That's, you know, helped transparency, helped, you know, kind of fees probably become more realistic, but it didn't really deliver the full technology journey, right? It didn't allow advisors to take control or to really deliver a properly digital proposition to their clients, right? And I think what's interesting now is, just as when actually Platform 2.0 came out, it wasn't necessarily wrong to have chosen one of the Platform 1.0 options at the time, right?
Right.
Just as 8 years ago, 10 years ago, it wasn't wrong to have chosen, you know, Transact's been a great business, you know, whatever business I used to work at, you know, that you can only make the choices available to you at the time, right? And I think it's important that's true. I think what's happened is technology's moved on now, right? Big time. And where in the past you probably had to be a big institution to run one of these things and to own one of these things and to do the change management and all the governance and everything. And you hear these, £100 million, £200 million, £500 million projects, all of which had to be paid for at some point by the customer. A lot of that was Platform 2.0, I think. And Platform 3.0 is saying that this technology has moved on. It's easier to deploy, it's lower cost to deploy, lower cost to maintain, it's fully digital all the way through. And it means it creates lots of different opportunities for different business models, actually, where all sorts of organizations can embed the investment platform technology and operations inside their own customer proposition. So effectively what's happening, I think, is moving control of the market closer to the customer, removing the need for compromise and saying, right, whether I'm a DFM, whether I'm an advice group, whether I'm a D2C, savings app, whatever it is, I can just plug in through this API. I can frankly be live in a matter of even days and certainly weeks. The idea that I have to rely on an enormous organization to support and deploy this thing is just no longer the case. And that's just a fact. It's not a, we did this at Seccl, obviously, but others do it too. And it's a feature, I think, or function rather, of the technology having moved on, right? And the idea now that we would see digital signatures as innovative or something like that is just nuts. I mean, it really is. I mean, I remember when COVID happened, 4 years ago, and everyone was rushing to do digital signatures. And I was working in Nucleus at the time, and we did that. We did it pretty well, I think. But that was never good. That could never be the end game, right? It's okay if you're signing a legal agreement to buy a house or something, but the idea that you have to go through that process to do relatively straightforward transactions or something on an investment platform seems to be well over engineered, because and there's also a weird thing where you see this, that you get much better digital experience normally with with a £20 a month savings app than you do from someone who's got £200,000 in an investment platform. And it actually compromises the advisor's delivery, I think. And I think what you've got now is modern technology that can do this. You then, in the 2.0 model, you've got these institutions typically sitting in the middle saying, well, we'll just consume, a half or 2/3 of the actual or the revenue that's been paid by the client, and we'll kind of make some promise to our shareholders we're going to make a 8 basis points profit or 10 basis points profit on this thing, just because HL did in the past and Transact did in the past. I don't think it means that's the right thing for advisors going forward, because you can buy this thing for a wholesale price, which is much less. And I think it's an incredibly exciting time, because I sort of look at it as 1.0 was a step forward from packaged products. 2.0 was definitely moved things forward, and it almost feels like, with hindsight, and maybe wouldn't recognize this at the time, but 2.0 is actually always been a stepping stone to 3.0, and it feels now what will happen in future, because the technology is easier to evolve and maintain because it's more modern. We might, I'm not sure there will be a platform 4.0. I think there'll just be 3.01, 3.02, 3.03, and it'll just iterate from here, because we shouldn't have to have the step change again, I don't think, because the tech is more flexible and can be iterated on, frankly, forever now. So I think it's a ridiculously exciting time, and I'm just actually really glad still to be doing this, and we had a bit of a role in the last iteration, I suppose, and to be able to do this at Seccl now with what feels like a really exciting business, really, really great shareholder trying to really move the thing forward is, just great.
Incredible stuff. I agree with you entirely that point needs to be reiterated. When I and others criticize and talk about the failure of 2.0, it's not to say that that wasn't the right decision at the time. As a matter of fact, I would consider myself a cheerleader in the rise of platform 2.0, and I will consider myself, he says arrogantly, also for probably about 5 years now, sounding this note of warning about the failure of 2.0, right? This data fragmentation, in my view, which we'll come back to. You have a slightly different take on the reason for, or a different take on the reason for the failure, but you have more credibility than anyone right? In talking about this, because you were at the forefront of 2.0. You created Nucleus. You built this thing to 20 billion by the time you left. This was all about alignment with advisors.
I think that's the key point, right? And actually, for what it's worth, I think Ian and Mike were at the forefront of it actually at Transact. But just to
well, I get Nucleus. Yes, carry on.
I think what's interesting is alignment is the word, right? That is the word, and that is the important word here, because I think what's happened is 2.0 has been somewhat captured. Either by sort of reverting to a model where it's owned by the asset management industry with the motivation actually to sell funds again, a bit like the 1.0 model, or it's been captured by owners who've got a short-term horizon and they're just looking to exit the business in the next 2 or 3 years. And that has consequences, right? And I think it's interesting. You might know, I don't know if we've talked about this before, I'm a incomplete or failed actuary by background. That's how I got here, And there's an interesting thing in mathematics around about game theory. And in a 3-person game, 2 will collude against the other, right? That's just a mathematical certainty. And I think it's interesting that what we actually want to happen here is that advisors and their clients collude against the platform, right? That's the better model, right? Because the cluster of the customer and the advisor, financial planner, are the consumer. That's how it should work, right? And we've got a buying group who's buying stuff as the best thing, the best price. And I think what we've had in the past is a little bit much too deference to the product providers saying, well, I'll keep on working with these guys because I've known them for 20 years. And my client might be paying 20% too much or 30% too much, but I've had a relationship with these guys forever. I said, well, no, you can't have that nostalgia. You're either on the customer side of the table or you're not. And I think it's such an interesting. You can't sort of be half. I think you can be half in this. And I think getting to the other side of that and being truly aligned with your client means that you really can't have these compromises in your business model where we'll talk on data, I'm sure later on, as you've alluded to a couple of times. I always think it's interesting. If you look at the big, the really big wealth managers, whatever we think of them and whatever they do, whether it's the Rathbones, the Tilneys, whoever it is, the big organizations, they just wouldn't use an investment platform that costs 25 or 30 basis points or 35. It just wouldn't even cross their minds. And actually, if you're a normal 100 million, 200 million pound, 300 million pound financial planning business, you're actually electing to operate at a competitive disadvantage against those firms because you're saying I'll have my clients pay 35 bits for this thing or whatever, 30 basis points, and you don't have to anymore. Now you did actually. 10 years ago, because you didn't have 100 million pounds to build one of these things, and the option was that people like people like Nucleus came along and said, well, we'll run this stuff on top of in our case on Bravura Sonata product. We'll put the capital in, we'll run all that stuff, and maybe that was the only option available. And I think now the other options are available, and that comes to that point that the decisions you make, you can only make in the on the day you make them, right? And with the knowledge you have at the time. And I think what we're at now is just. It's time for something better, to be honest, and something new. And here we are. And I actually think sometimes a guy who maybe gets a little bit too little credit in this actually is Angus MacDonald. Who started Hubwise. I mean, he was several years since he went down this road, really. I think, and started talking about I can offer this thing for sub 10 basis points, whatever it was, out to firms that want to do this. And he maybe he actually got the ball rolling on platform 3.0 quite a while ago now, and maybe quite a narrow niche. But if we roll things forward, I think you got to say he had something quite right there.
You're talking about commercial alignment in terms of cost, right? And all the analysis that I've done, over the last decade, looking at platforms every single year, says to me the yield on assets. So if you take revenue of platforms, you know this, but I'll just explain what I mean. Revenue of platforms and divide it by the assets on the platform, essentially you get something like 27 basis points, even now, right? Of that 27 basis point, 28, who cares? Of that 27 basis point, about 3 or 4 basis points is cash interest that is being withheld on a small proportion of the asset, about 4 or 5% of the asset, but actually translates to be, a big chunk of the revenue of the platform. So you're talking about commercial alignment. My real gripe with and I agree, we can take some fat out of that. Maybe we'll return to that point later on. But my real gripe with platform 2.0 is this fragmentation of data that has led to the advisor chasing a tail. And the result is, what's happened over the last couple of years is that platforms, as you said, have ceded technological control for the most part, to somebody else, right? And they are just completely a distribution, marketing distribution, and non-existent customer service, and more importantly, API integration have failed. It doesn't work in any meaningful way. And, I learned this in a very, very hard way when we started Timeline 2018, 2017, when 2018, then we, ultimately we spent at the time, for a small business, like ours, a lot of money trying to integrate with third-party platforms, pull data into our environment. And I would say we probably did this better than anyone I know, but it was never to the point where you can confidently say, well, actually, we've joined the journey up for the advisor. So the result is that we have an ecosystem that is basically dysfunctional. The advisor goes to do fact find somewhere else, somewhere, then they maybe on PDF or Excel or God forbid on paper, then they got to rekey that information into their CRM system, and then you have to rekey same information to their planning and cash flow technology. They do risk profiling elsewhere. Oh, by the way, and they might have done KYC in their own businesses. Oh, by the way, when they want to onboard their client onto the platform, they have to do KYC again. Platforms can't do pension transfers effectively in this industry digitally, and the whole thing, forgive the French, is become a bit of a shit show. So
I think it's spot on, and I think it's not unconnected to the commercial agenda, right? I think there's an issue here because although it's very frustrating for people like you, I'm sure, running Timeline, I actually think it's probably really frustrating for the people in the business, in the platform as well, right? Because I think a lot of the issue is the data is not readily available, right? And it's certainly not readily available on a read and a write basis. So you've got this kind of, it's not, I don't think necessarily people are being obstructive, although there will be some of that playing here. I think the other side of it is you've got a bunch of legacy technology or inadequately designed technology or bolt-on systems over here, whatever it is. So you don't actually have a coherent starting point from which these firms are operating, right? And it's an interesting thing because the reason why in our business it's super easy to surface all the data in the API is because the data is all in the system, right? And there aren't quite other systems hanging around the edge. And there's a discipline in the system design, which actually has its roots obviously in our founder, amazing guy called Dave Harvey, who was so clear this is what had to happen, right? And you have to start there, or you end up with this kind of bolted on systems everywhere, and it doesn't work. So, like for example, we put in a new fully digital KYC tool into our business recently, but when that gets surfaced to the user, it's still through our API, right? It's not like, oh, you use this system over here and then come back and all this crap. It doesn't work that way. And I think if you look at the discipline of, like Stripe that does payments, right, or Shopify that does e-commerce, the way they think about this, they're doing all the back end, all the plumbing, all the infrastructure, a bit like we are in an embedded investment platform, but they're doing it in such a way that they're sort of generalizing everything such that it can be surfaced in many different ways through the API, right? Including the data, including the endpoints you're transacting with, and it comes really to a sort of technology and operations architecture challenge, right? Because at the moment, and the other thing which I think is really important on data, because clearly data is enormously important in delivering financial planning, right? It's critical to know what's going on and all that stuff. And it's really interesting. I remember I did a leadership course a few years ago, and one of the guys that spoke on it was a guy called Dave Lewis, who used to run Tesco. And he was big, I think did the big turnaround at Tesco. And when he started working there, he got really in trouble effectively from his colleagues, right? Because he would spend all his time in the shops, not in the head office. And they were like, what are you doing? Why are you not around us? You spend your time in the stores, you're traveling around the country, all this stuff. And he said, well, I want to be where the business gets done. Right? I want to speak to our customers and our staff. I want to be close to the customer. And I know where does the business happen, right? And where the business happens in financial planning is in the dialogue and the information flow between the client and the advisor, right, or the financial planner. And therefore, they must have the data, right, or else the business can't get done. And so it's so fundamental that the data must be readily, 24/7, completely live, available. All the data that is required in order to make a decision or create an alert or, make a transaction happen, or else actually the financial planning is just compromised, and you're delivering a suboptimal outcome. And I think that message of where does the business get done, I think is often completely forgotten about. And you can set a platform business and go, okay, we've done this workaround, and okay, we can just about get the MI right for our board once a month or something. But this information has to be in the hands of the customer, right, in real time, not when you feel like it, or someone does a batch upload at 3 o'clock in the morning. This is a real time thing, and you see it so much in, even if it's not transactional data, even just if I'm making a payment, so I'm putting 20 grand into my ISA, why am I waiting until tomorrow to see that payment in my account? This has happened. We live in a world where this is all like super instant. And, I know, like in our business, for example, if you make a payment on your internet banking and you put the right reference on it, you see it, I don't know, 10 seconds later or something like that, and it's in your app and in your account. And I just don't, I think we sort of accepted for a long time that everything's next day or 3 days later or whatever it is. And that just doesn't feel, it probably was okay 10 years ago, right? Because that was the expectation. And then people like Monzo came along and Starling came along and completely raised the bar on the traditional banks. Most of whom, to be fair, have responded pretty well to that. I got my apps with RBS, and for my purpose, most of the time it's fine. It doesn't, But I know you can see the system is doing stuff in the background because you can almost see the screen. You're kind of flashing about. Whereas, I think that the experience on Mons or Starling is better still, right? Because it's actually digital all the way through. And I think we've got the opportunity here and we do this today, and others can do it over time, but you can't do it if the back end tech is clunky or relies on batch overnight stuff and isn't fully digital. And even the discussion about APIs, which you touched on earlier, there's a lot of businesses now going, we've got an API for this, API for that. They haven't built their business around an API product, right? They've built an old system. They've inserted some really expensive middleware that says, oh, look, we can surface some of this data if someone asks for it. It isn't intrinsic to the business. And actually, when I joined Seccl, you can see it, our marketing pre-me joining was all about being API first. And I'll be honest, when I joined, I didn't quite believe it was going to be true. I was like, okay, yeah. And then I joined, and it's in the culture of the company. It's how we think, right? So we've got like way more capability in our API than we have in our UI because we're an API. We think that way. And frankly, in an ideal world, which isn't today, but might be in 5 years' time, we wouldn't have a UI because it would always be surfaced by our customer who's delivering something for their clients, right? That's how we'd, in an ideal world, have it be. And whether that was a CRM system or whatever it was, doesn't really matter. And so even, you see this a lot of conferences. The only conference more popular as an AI conference. If you start P, you get the second most common conference, the API stuff. But unless it's intrinsic to the business, you're not necessarily moving it that far on, right? You start putting a layer. What you're actually doing is put a layer of additional cost in here, right? Which means every time something changes in the back end, you've got to change it in the API. Or even worse, someone makes a demand in the front end which you can't deliver in the back end. So you put some crap code in the middle and create a more expensive middleware that then gets bigger and bigger, more and more messy over time because you can never make the changes in the back end. And I think it's probably such a technical point that it's really hard for people to get there. Which people shouldn't need to know that stuff. But when you come to choosing vendors for this sort of business, it is utterly fundamental, right? Because you'll not be sitting there. When we put out the LTA changes, and we've got single code base, single product through the API, got the LTA changes out before the tax year end. We have to do it once, and it's done, and it's available to everyone who uses the API. It's not like I've now got 27 middlewares. I've got to go and change all of them, right? And they're going to be different. All that crap that goes on, and that is why we end up with the cost base we've got, right? Because although it's probably commercially overpriced as a sector from the customer's point of view, it's not necessarily yet overly profitable, right? It's an activity which has got a lot of friction costs in it, and a lot of kind of integration costs and stuff, which are not necessarily adding value to anybody apart from the software companies that are charging the change management fees. And there's just a last commercial point. Actually, there's most of the vendors in the space will have roughly half their revenue comes from change management and implementation costs. That's roughly how it plays, and half from licensing the product. And again, it's a discipline point for us. We're a product company, so we're only going to ever have revenue for that because we want to be aligned. And the minute I know I can make more profit this year by charging my clients for regulatory change or a big implementation fee, then I'm misaligned immediately, right? Because I want the consultancy cost basically, not make my product better. And I'll sit around forever allowing my product to degrade because I know I can charge you more by for change stuff. And this is where the commercial part needs to be so well understood alongside the tech, because their company, like I think Stripe is an example, right, on payments, which I think is a world-class firm, does amazing stuff. The idea that they would go along to every retailer who uses Stripe and say, oh, by the way, we're going to charge you 20 grand for that last change, it's just nuts. It just wouldn't happen, And I think that's imagine every taxi driver who uses Stripe or SumUp, has to go, oh, by the way, I'm putting all your costs up because we had a software upgrade on SumUp. I mean, it just never happened,
So do you mind me asking, when did you, this is important, I'm going somewhere with this. When did you found Nucleus again?
Well, it was founded in 2006. We had the idea the first business plan was in 1999, but we started in 2006, yeah.
Right, 2006. And Transact, I'm going somewhere. Transact was founded in 2000. Right. And we can go to we can go to others. This just to our audience, this might sound like we're geeking out on technology, talking about this difference. I think it's an important difference between API-first company and what my CTO referred to as analog, technology with an API facade, right? So these analog type, platforms, basically they built multiple implementation of their technology for multiple clients. They have various capabilities in various code bases, and they can build, as you said, a layer of API and a layer of cost in front of this. Not that they have, and they can expose some of their data, So now the difference I was going to point to is Stripe was founded in 2000, right? 2010. 2010, right? That business, as I understand it, entirely API first, which is we're going to build this thing in a way that can talk to other things, and in a way that the data is surfaced and exposed. And if you want, you can come and get what you need, right? So,
100%.
and I've seen Seccl's API, right? Everything from KYC, account opening, account funding, setting up a pension, setting up an ISA is API led. And so, I'm not saying any advisor firm's going to do this, but the idea is that you can go and get what you need. This is not just about, we got all these things in the back end, and the difference is that, this API first company that we're using as an example, Stripe, apparently processes something like $1 trillion dollars of payment just in a single year. 1 trillion. Dollars of payment, and he runs on, I don't know how many clients and merchants they have, but it's thousands, and they can make incremental improvements to that technology. Whereas in platform world, because you have all these analog systems, that's why you are having to do what is it they call this? The migration from the old one to the other, to the new one, and to the next one. And I spoke to an advisor recently, and he said to me, Abraham, we run £500 million in this business as an advisory firms. We cannot move, right? We are in effect being slowed down because of all this migration going on in our businesses. So I think these are really important stuff about this issue between API first versus API facade in platform.
Yeah, I heard the expression "dino," like short for dinosaur, but it was actually digital in name only, And there's a thing. It's that layer of pretending, and I think you could sort of think about Stripe as a self-operating system for payments, right? That might be a way of thinking about it, right? So they do all the plumbing, all the difficult bits. I think famously they say you can do payments with one line of code, right? So if you've got a website and you want to insert Stripe, you do I think we would see Seccl as the same. It's like trying to be an operating system for managing investments, right? And I think it's interesting. We would seek much more inspiration from Stripe than we would from any of the incumbent platforms, because that's how we think, right, every day. And we're obviously bringing the industry knowledge to do that, but the technology inspiration comes entirely from Stripe, Shopify, those sort of organizations. And I actually remember when we started Nucleus. It's interesting, to your point, we started some like 6 years after Ian and the guys got Transact started. And by then, most homes and offices had broadband, right? Which wasn't true when Transact started. And that meant that, we could put the work of keying the applications and stuff and keying trades onto the advisor. So we never had the same, you couldn't send a fax to us, you couldn't, send us a letter or whatever. We never created the infrastructure, because by the time we launched, everyone had broadband, so you didn't need to have it. And I think at the time, I'll forget the numbers, but roughly, I think we undercut Transact by about 50% at the time when we launched. I think they were charging 70, 75 basis points in the round when we launched. And it was just because, at the same point, the technology had moved on. And in this case, it wasn't necessarily our technology, but the society's infrastructure had moved on and allowed us to think about the problem differently. And just the same way, Stripe simply could not have launched in 2000, right? The serverless thing wasn't there. None of that stuff existed, or if it did, it was in super embryonic form. And I think you get these cycles, but this is what I pointed out earlier. You're now in a situation where these things can all increment forever, right? And it becomes an organizational discipline point. That are we committed to having a single code base, always in the cloud, not doing shonky workarounds to try and pretend we've got some functionality we don't, and we just not going to go down that road. And we'll be judged on that, obviously, like in 5 or 10 years' time or 20 years' time. But if you're truly a product company and you want to be charging people a form of license fee for that product and not charging them for change and that sort of stuff, you have to commit to that, right? And the minute you start saying, well, I know we said that before, but sorry, we've changed our mind, it starts to break. And it's interesting as well, because it comes to where you draw the line on your functionality and the markets you want to reach. So we are proudly a provider of what is essentially a utility type service, right? We don't run away from that expression. Utility is not free. People talk about things get commoditized. Gold and oil are commodities, but you don't sell them for nothing, right? We're okay with that label. We're going to provide that to a world-class standard with a huge range of functionality within that. You might one day do it all over the world. I don't know. That will be what we do. We're not going to suddenly start being a CRM system or, trying to eat your lunch. We're just going to be, and I think it's an important strategic differentiation in the space. We just want to get, better, faster, more effective at what we do and cover more ground in that APIs that allows, I say in our business, whether it's financial planners, whether it's DFMs, whether it's D2C apps, whatever, just be able to do this more easily and more straightforwardly. And, some of that, to be honest, is actually, regularly reviewing our API docs. Are these any good? Are these good enough? Are these for developers to build on them? I don't think anyone's sitting in a platform 2.0 business thinking about their API docs. I just don't believe that's a conversation that's happening, right? That conversation happens in our business every week, and we'll get people saying, well, we were building against this and it wasn't quite clear enough, or, whatever, it was gone out of date. So like our product owners, as we think about new capability, we obsess about that as well. It's not just, the press release for, Citywire or something. We're trying to make the developer experience kind of super cool too, because in the end, that's where you avoid duplication of cost and hassle and friction down the track. And again, I'd be surprised if that's not the same way that Stripe or something thinks about it. Whereas I don't believe that anyone in I don't pick on them for any reason. No one at Aegon's thinking about that. I don't think as a job.
Yeah. And so let's talk about distribution, go to market, so to speak, for Seccl. And this is where you and I start to digress in our thinking. So you've got this set of incredible APIs, you've got UIs as well, but as you alluded to, you were kind of forced into this. You would rather not be creating UIs. And so this is my thinking, that somebody has to take these APIs and join it up into other things that advisors want to use, that an advisor have to use to make the lifeblood of financial planning, in this case I'm talking data, to flow seamlessly in the way that the advisor needs it. That job, in my mind, is not for the advisor firm. And I know that you want to take this to the advisor, but I thought that way before. I no longer do, because I'm thinking, well, the advisor just wants to concentrate on running their businesses and meeting the needs of their clients. They don't really want to worry about, I would go as far as saying, it's the same reason why, cash flow modeling is important to financial advisors, but nobody put, I've only ever met one firm who put their own cash flow tool together. Nobody creates their own and maintain their own client portal. Nobody creates and maintain their own CRM. I can go on and on. So this is where I'm kind of thinking about Seccl's strategy. I'm thinking, going directly to the advisor, is that the way to do this?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I know we have slightly different views on it. I think it's important to
tell
say...
me I'm wrong. Yeah, please, go on.
No, I'm not... I think there's nuance in the answer, actually. And I think it depends a lot on the nature of the firm and what they're trying to achieve and what size they are and how they're set up and what infrastructure they've got themselves. Just as, some advisor firms have set up their own DFM business, for example, and others don't, right? I think in general, as a rule of thumb, smaller firms probably shouldn't do this, right? I think it's just not worth it.
What is small?
Well, I think it depends. Again, it depends on how they're set up. But I think anyone sitting with, I don't know, 100 million, couple hundred million quid definitely is too hard, definitely. I think once you're north of $1 billion, it becomes actually you probably should. And somewhere in the middle will depend on the nature of the firm and how they're set up and what their growth ambitions are and all that sort of stuff. It'd be roughly, it's still depends.
I don't disagree, actually. I don't disagree with those numbers, by the way.
Yeah. There's that sort of shape, and I think it's interesting, we and different firms have different motivations as well, right? So we are finding ourselves making really deep integrations with some of the CRM systems or some of the other client portals in the market. To your point, somebody might decide to use a different client portal deeply integrated into Seccl rather than our UI, and we'd be perfectly happy with that. That's a perfectly good outcome. I think there'll come a time when some firms will just say, well, for example, I don't want the platform to be any kind of profit center, right? I just want to strip it to the bone in terms of cost, and I think I can run that. If I'm a £2 billion advice firm, I can run that super tight on top of Seccl, and I'll make all my money out of financial planning. Or I'm going to make the platform invisible. I'm going to make it part of my financial planning fee, right? So if you go, I mentioned earlier, firms like Rathbones or Brewin Dolphin, Evelyn, there isn't really a platform in that. It's absorbed inside the investment management fee or whatever they call it, and you can't do that with most certainly platform 2.0. Now that's just a fee point, right? There's other bits where, for example, firms will have issues around about constraining their investment universe, or how they do the reporting, or how they do KYC or whatever, where they want to do it a certain way, and they just can't get that level of control into their business by using a 2.0 platform. So I think there are definitely times when it is the right thing to do. I think, interestingly, amongst I know you also have a view on this as well, on the bigger firms, consolidators, some of whom I think will succeed and some won't, by the way. I think, again, what is the value in those businesses? A lot of it's actually creating, it's not so much about the platform, the platform cost, it's can I take 40 or 50% out of my operating costs by integrating the technology really well. So that could be getting a super tight integration between my CRM system and my platform. And while I might save, 10 bips on the platform cost, the real prize might be 30% of my non-advice operating costs. And I think for businesses like that, I think Seccl can be an amazing contributor towards that success in that model. So I think it's really interesting. And I'd say we go out to non-advised so app-based fintechs as well. I think as you get toward, there's going to be lots of change in the advice, guidance, boundaries, all that sort of stuff. I think there's lots of opportunities to make propositions live on top of Seccl that might sit somewhere on that continuum, which is fine. Again, because we've got a single product which is not being customized for anybody, it's super easy for us to do this. So as you probably know, we run the junior ISA behind Go Henry all the way through to kind of fairly complex wealth management businesses on top of the same tech. So I guess for me, it's almost anyone who's got money invested or wants to invest money can hopefully find their way to a Seccl platform, and that could be through all sorts of routes, from small advice firms to big ones, with different technology sitting in the middle often,
And this is where I will be. I will answer that cry for small independent financial advisors. And the work that we've been thinking about this, and for best part of 2 years, and working on this for quite a few months now. And the way we think about this, platform 3.0 at Timeline. So if you hear me talking about platform 3.0, we're not just, dreaming of this world. We are actually building it. And to me, Timeline Platform 3.0 isn't just another Me Too platform. It is the integrated ecosystem for modern financial advisors. It's the seamless integration of the critical advice tools from customizable fact find, risk profiler, cash flow, investment analytics, digital letters of authority, KYC, modular reporting, client portal, with embedded trading, custody, administration capability. It is literally, David, the Avengers assembling for the modern financial advisor. And all of that for, 50%, half the price of what you will get in the marketplace. What's not to like? And so I am truly excited, that we are partnering with Seccl again, on this journey. And again, as you said, we couldn't have built this, I don't even think 2 years ago or even a year ago. But the minute we made the decision that we're going through this route, I still have the postcard that you gave me when you came to pitch to our board, and maybe I'll read it. But in effect, this was in January, and to be here 3 months later, and I said, my CTO will say this, that actually the easiest part of the job is integrating into Seccl, because the hardest part of the job is building the ecosystem or expanding our ecosystem to do all of those two things. And the incredible thing is that I saw this, the demo of this thing a few days ago, and it was like, wow. The incredible thing is, like, this data fragmentation disappears. It doesn't matter where you start the journey. Start with fact find today and leave it there, and then go, a year later or 6 months later to onboard a client to the platform, and there's no rekeying happening. If you just onboard the client to the platform, and then a few days or few months later, you want to renew the client fact find, or you want to update their cash flow model, the data that you've rekeyed, that you've keyed in, it's there where you need it, because everything is powered by a single source of truth, of your client's data. So I am truly, truly excited for us to be working with Seccl on this.
No, likewise. Look, it's amazing. It's I've been an enormous admirer of your business and you and your business for a long, long time. So to have the opportunity to do this is, it's a really remarkable moment, actually. And I think you're right. I think if we tried to do this 2 years ago, it would have been impossible. I think we were probably short on functionality at that time. We'd had a this is a great idea, but it just doesn't work. We get stuck. And as we've kind of built out the feature set, I think we're kind of approaching this point of what we call feature parity, with the main platforms. And I just think it's, as we said before, it's a time for something better, right? And there's a kind of an audience, a community, a gang of people who, quite rightly have got right behind you in the last several years for all the good work you've done. And, we are also crazy excited to be doing this. I really mean that. It's a really very extraordinary moment, I think, where hopefully we can pull together this whole thing and just take all this friction out of the thing, all this complexity. And there's a real value in simplicity. And I think, what's that line about? It's really hard to make the complex simple. And I think both what you do in Timeline and what we do in Seccl, and then we do together on the platform, there's an enormous amount of complexity from end to end in this whole thing, right? From the investment decisions to the client management, all the way through to managing client money, or whatever it is. And I think when this thing is revealed, we'll see hopefully a real achievement in delivering something highly, highly complex in a way which is super super simple to people on the other end of it. I think that will just be a great thing to celebrate, to be honest, Abraham.
I want to try and wrap this up because you're a busy man. We're doing this on a bank holiday. I'm sure Mrs. Ferguson want you back.
We're going to have for lunch, surely.
Right. But I want to address this point that comes up up and up again. So you joined Seccl just over a year ago was when you
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
2 years ago. And you've taken the thing now to what, on 1.52 billion from
about 2 billion, near enough 2 billion.
2 billion, incredible achievement. But that doesn't stop people from saying to me, Abraham, Seccl is burning what, 10 million pounds a year. It's going to take a couple of more years because you have to build this thing, infrastructure. You got, I don't know how many people, 100 plus people, most of them engineers. How are you going to fund this thing to the point of profitability? I have my thoughts, but you go first.
Yeah, to be honest, this was when I was looking for a new job a couple of 2 or 3 years ago. I had 2 or 3 things that were really top of my mind. I'd actually taken myself away on my own for 3 or 4 days early that year and thought about how I saw the market, what things going to happen, what mattered for me, what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, all that sort of stuff, and tried to be really cold about it before I made any decisions. And there were 3 things that really I came home with, a piece of paper. I didn't take a computer with me. I just took a notepad, right? And there were 3 things. One was, whatever I did next, I wanted to feel very aligned with the shareholder in terms of 3 things, really. One was on ambition level. So we want to do something really, really big, really important. One was on values. So I didn't want to feel misaligned on what we were going to stand for and how we were going to behave. And the third was on duration, where I'm now 54. By the time I guess I was 51 or something. And we happen to have relatively young children. And I was like, well, I want to do this at least until such time as our son leaves school, which is in June 2033. And so we had a long duration of this, right? I wasn't into doing something for 2 or 3 years and trying to make a quick buck and all that sort of stuff. So when I met, I had the great privilege of meeting the team at Octopus, who at the time they'd acquired Seccl in 2019. It was really clear we were mega aligned on those 3 things, right? And while the business never will be the finished article because nothing's ever over, it felt there was a real strong starting point to go and do this with them. And I find, it's not often you get a business that has got an opportunity in a moment and it's backed by just the right people at that right time. We're trying to replace the infrastructure of an entire industry here, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It's not a short-term play. It's a long-term thing, right? And it might take, finally, it might take 10, 15, 20 years, not to break even, but until we really achieve what we would consider to be, the sort of success that we're trying to do here. And as you know, Octopus has done this in other sectors, probably most famously in the energy sector. So we felt I felt enormously aligned and excited, and just I felt like I was in an organization I always wanted to be in. Actually, it's a really unusual thing. I don't really have the word. I'm not good enough for words to articulate it properly, but it felt like this is a real gathering point of the right technology, the right ideas, the right people at the right time, and now we're getting on with it. And we've got 140 people in the business. We lose a lot of money every month, as you've alluded to. That's was to be expected. It's kind of we're trying to do a really big thing, and it's going to take a while to get there. But it's actually crazy exciting. It's very like the conversation we're having about Timeline and Seccl together. Actually, it just feels like a real gathering of something that can be really special, to be honest. And I feel very lucky and very fortunate to have ended up in this position because it's not every day you sort of land on your feet so well after an earlier role in the industry. So no, it's if my wife were sitting here or my kids and I've probably been walking about with a big stupid grin on my face for the last 2.5 years since this was agreed or announced, so 2.25 years, whatever it's been. And yeah, it feels great.
Yeah, no, and again, I agree with that entirely. But I had to verify these things myself. So, so there's 3 points that I landed on sustainability of Seccl, right?
Yeah.
The first is, can I get not just like written private commitment, but can I get public commitment from the people behind this thing? And so in a subsequent episode to this, people will hear Simon Rogerson, who is the founder of of Octopus, founder of Group CEO of Octopus, where he made that public commitment, to me and of course to our listeners, that Octopus is in this for the longer term, to back this thing. And I think that's really important, right? So you want that commitment and you want it to be public, kind of. I'm saying I trust David Ferguson with my life. But actually I want to hear I'm joking. I want to hear from Simon. So that's the first one. The second thing was to look at track record of the organization and how these organizations behaved. And one of the things Simon said to me, which is visible to everyone, he said, at some point, at a particular point, so obviously Octopus backed Octopus Energy, and apparently at some point, they had 150 million of Octopus balance sheet capital in this thing. And this is before the thing became successful. On the same day that I interviewed him for the podcast, it came out that Octopus Energy is now the number 1 electricity supplier in the UK and number 2 for gas. And of course that business now is going to the moon. And this is how he thinks about backing Seccl as an infrastructure in financial services. And then the number 3 question, the number 3 way for me is to say, does he have the wherewithal? Where is the resources? And then I go and look at the balance sheet. Essentially, when you look at Octopus investment, which basically generates something like 70 million of, positive cash flow or profit. And if you then look at all the bets, call it, that Octopus is taking, Octopus Money, Seccl, there is 20 million a year going into all of these things. And then there is still 50 million net. So I was saying to the guy, what do you do with the 50 million? He says to me, it's not your business, Abraham. My point is, I couldn't think of a better backer. As you said, I couldn't think of a better group of people to back this thing. And he said to me on that podcast, we're not a public company. We would never be a public company because we are taking these very longer term, bets or risk on businesses that we truly believe in, and we're going to stand behind them. And so what else does a man need? You have the commitment publicly, you have the track record of the organization, you have the wherewithal from a financial point of view. I think that you guys I think that together we are set for a really transformational change in the way financial advice and investing is delivered in this country. So I'm so privileged and excited to be going on this journey with you, David.
No, well, so are we, Abraham. It's honestly, it's really special. I say, I don't remember exactly the date, but I think we met maybe 10 or 12, maybe more years ago. I remember in a little Cafe Nero in Seven Dials in Covent Garden was the first time I met you. And,
I was like, humble paraplanner at the time. No longer humble.
Yeah, exactly.
No longer a paraplanner, still humble.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I remember being hugely energized by that, even just by that discussion that day. And yeah, this is just feels like a really brilliant little milestone in hopefully in the trajectories of each of our respective organizations, because I think it's super cool. Very exciting.
It's incredible. Thank you, David, for your time and for your wisdom, and for encouraging me, cheering me on. Long before. So it's an incredible opportunity to be doing business together. You know what they say? Oh, Steve Jobs says, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the people who do. So let's go and change this.
Yeah, let's go. I agree with that. Let's go. That'd be brilliant. Yeah, very exciting. Fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, David. Thank you for your time. That's a wrap on today's show. Massive thanks to my production crew, especially Jake Osha, Melissa Canham, and the entire team. And of course, to our sponsor, Timeline, the market-leading provider of integrated planning technology and model portfolio service to advisors. I do hope you've enjoyed today's show. Head over to Apple Podcast and give us your review there. Until next time, goodbye.